Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, Anxietea, a mental health podcast where I give you mental health stories, self care tips and techniques, advice, and whatever you all want me to discuss. As a reminder and quick disclaimer that I'm not a mental health professional in any way, shape, or form, I am just a mental health advocate getting through life one day at a time. Here is also the warning that there may be sensitive topics discussed within this podcast, so feel free to leave if this does not sound like the podcast for you. I will not be offended. Please do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. So, without further ado, welcome to episode 13. Let's grab our tea, take a sip in of some self-love, and exhale the stresses of life. Today, I am drinking Pure Leaf Lemon Iced Tea. I just bought it today, and it is pretty good, if I do say so myself. So, for today's podcast, we are going over some interviews about addiction and regarding addiction disorder. So today I have interviewed somebody, and I'm going to keep his name anonymous and confidential. I did not get permission to share his name, so I want to keep this a safe space and confidential for him. So, without further ado, I will get to the questions in 1 second. So, my first question was, if you do not mind me asking, please tell me what your substance of choice was and how your addiction spiraled. So, he mentioned that his substance of choice was THC and edibles. He did not mention how his addiction spiraled, but that is completely okay. He did mention his substance of choice so that we could get a little bit of background. And my next question was, how did you know you had an addiction? And he said that he knew that he had an addiction because he had really bad withdrawal symptoms. And when he tried to quit taking the edibles, he would go to take them and his body would start shaking, telling him no, and his mind didn't care. It wanted the fix. So basically, what he was trying to say there was that he did not take quitting very well, and he felt like he needed to quickly have the fix because of the withdrawal symptoms being so strong. And also, to mention that this interview was also written down. This is not a face-to-face interview. This was over text message. And my next question was, what information did you know regarding addiction before you realized that you had a problem? And he said that he did not know too much because he didn't think THC would be a problem, to be honest, and he knew plenty of people who did it. And that is pretty common with THC. And I have went to support groups for loved ones to show my support for them, and there were plenty of people there that said that their addiction started with the substance of choice being THC. So, my next question was, what are some of the preconceived notions that you think people have regarding addiction, and how has this affected you? And he mentioned that you're in a different state of mind and you don't realize until you stop, and it's like you're trapped in another reality. So it was just kind of the notion that he had about how he realized how addiction felt. after having the addiction. And I asked for my next question is, how have you been maintaining ways to remain sober? And he mentioned that he exercises, he runs, and he enjoys yummy food. And I think that it is a great way to remain sober is finding occupations or habits that are positive, of course, or hobbies that keep your mind off of the substance and trying to stay away from any triggers. So just being really self-aware about what helps can help you remain sober for the long run, even though it is really hard. And of course, people do struggle with that a lot. I have heard that it does help to find productive activities that you like to do. So my next question was, how have these ways benefited you and changed your life for the better? And he said that it makes him feel free and not codependent on something to be happy or to numb the pain. So that is common with a lot of people that I've heard with addiction disorder, where they feel like they need their substance in order to feel anything, really, to stop feeling either numb or to numb certain pain that you feel or heartbreak, or those that are depressed may try to take these drugs as a way to self-medicate or cope in order to feel happy because of the way that certain drugs can affect the chemicals within your brain. So my next question to him was, tell me ways where people have helped you. And he mentioned that most of his friends just let him vent to them, which really helped with everything, and told him to think for himself. So friends are a great way to help take your mind off of everything and is a great support system for you, especially in your darkest of days. Just kind of having somebody there, especially when you feel like you can't trust yourself in that moment, or you need to rely on somebody other than yourself for help, which is completely fine because, I mean, that's what friends are there for, and that is the same with family. Some people mention that their family is a great support system, even having a pet with them because they feel responsibility for another living creature. And my next question to him was, tell me ways where people have enabled him. And so he mentioned that whenever people would talk about weed in general or getting high, made it really hard to not want to get high or take that substance. And he mentioned that he would crumble every time because it just seemed like he had to and that he felt like it. So peer pressure is another way where addictions can spiral. So if you are surrounded by people that are addicted to a substance, it is easier to fall into that trap. So within support groups and rehabs, they do mention to try to stay away from people that have enabled you in those kinds of ways. Stay away from friends that do the same sorts of substances or trigger you to feel like you need to do those substances, or even in a way force you or make you. Some people are just friends with people because they do those substances and they make them feel like it's okay to do this substance and do this to themselves, or they get those kinds of substances from them, and the only reason that they hang out with them is to kind of make themselves feel better for doing that substance, if that kind of makes sense. My next question was, what can people do to decrease the stigma against addiction? And he mentioned that just know that everyone has something they're going through or have gone through and are living different lives. So don't treat people differently just because you think they are, quote unquote, some addict or crackhead. Just be wary of people trying to manipulate you. So again, those were not my words, and he was quoting what people have said to him. And yeah, it is really important that people do not look at those with addiction or those with the addiction disorder in a negative way or with a negative connotation, because like I mentioned before in my previous podcast, that these people with addiction disorder are people just like me and you, and it is the same thing as having a mental illness. It is a real thing and it is a real disease, and within society today we are learning more and more about addiction and are more open to being more generous to these people and more helpful towards them and looking at them less like criminals. And I think in the future that we will eventually get to that point where we are starting to end the stigma, just like with mental illness. But for some reason, addiction is not treated the same as mental illness, even though addiction is a mental disorder. So the next question that I asked him was, what do you feel triggers your desire for substances? And he mentioned emotions, pain, trauma, and the need to be numb. So a lot of times people will go to substances when they are feeling any sort of emotion that they don't know how to deal with or maybe makes them feel more negative. And especially those stronger emotions. There's also been the discussion about men in the mental health world being told that showing emotions and crying is a weakness, so therefore it kind of suppresses men's emotions. So in that way, I feel like that might be going on here as well. He didn't mention that, but I have heard a lot of men mentioning that they don't know how to cope with certain emotions because they were told not to have those emotions or express those emotions due to feeling emasculated. And I think it's really important for society to start being more aware and cognizant of men's mental health needs as well. So, my last question to him was, what advice do you have for both people with addiction and family members trying to help their loved ones with addiction? And he said, love yourself and tell them and or yourself that you're loved and or you love them, and let them talk to you when they need to yeah, sorry. Let them talk to you when they need to and don't force it on them. And people can only change if they want to. And that is a really, really good point. Within support groups and rehab sessions, they do mention that you can't help somebody that can't help themselves. The people with addiction disorder need to be able to want to help themselves in order to get that help that they seek and really succeed. And it is a lifelong journey. And it is also necessary to realize that it is not your fault. It is not any family member's fault. It is genetic. It is a disorder. It is a real disease. So, as we complete our journey, I want to wish everyone luck on their own individualized journeys, and I hope that you can find comfort in these videos and knowing that you are not alone. Please share these videos to spread awareness and end the mental health stigma. For those of you that do watch and support my videos, thank you. It means a lot to know that someone cares about these messages, especially now in a time where we need more love and less hate towards one another. Now that we have completed our 13th journey together, let's take a sip in of some self-love and exhale the stresses of life. Thank you.